just so you know you're muted.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How are you? And welcome to the second night of our Leveling the Playing Field, looking at DEI from a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of leadership and how leadership plays a part in all the facets of what we deem DEI, as our keynote said last night, DEIB. So what we'll be doing is we'll be joining you shortly in a couple of minutes. And tonight we have a special guest because she's one of Stockton's own. So I'm going to turn the, that's the pastor in me. I was going to say turn the service over. I'm going to turn the program over to one of our wonderful doctoral students and an outstanding GA. And she was integral in putting this program together. And I would like to introduce Joven Fernandez.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Gray. While I was muted, you could probably read my lips as I said, amen, that's okay. Nothing wrong with little church on Tuesday. But all right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited for night number 2 of our virtual summit that we've put together for all of you. And as Dr. Gray mentioned, tonight is extra special because we have an alum who will be speaking this evening. And anytime we can have alumni come back and re-engage with the program, that's always really exciting. Even just to see, you know, where they are, how they're doing, but more importantly, how did this program really help prepare them for the next steps in their journey in their career. So we have a great discussion waiting for all of us from Dr. Alexander. So looking at the time at 6:04, I think it's safe to say that we can get started. Just a little disclaimer. We know that with the busyness, a lot of folks who want to be here cannot be here in live time. So we're confident that folks will be catching up later on and watching this fruitful discussion. So no worries if you can't be with us right now. We also have a handful of people who are joining us through the Facebook live stream, as well as here on the webinar. So no matter how you're joining us or what time you're joining us, we're just grateful that you're here with us this evening. So with that being said, I'm going to kick off and read Dr. Alexander's bio. So let's hear about her greatness. So Dr. Marquetta Alexander, currently the Director of Diversity and Inclusion. She is an accomplished educator with more than 22 years of teaching and leadership experience. She was responsible for data-driven classroom instruction, writing new curriculum for high school career technical education programs, to solid leadership strategies and practices that enhance teaching and learning for an entire school community. Her overall success with handling matters around affirmative action and diversity and inclusion among staff led to a pivot in her career where she now serves as the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at RWJ Health, the largest healthcare leader in the state of New Jersey. Marquetta has explored teaching as far as Kenya, where she co-taught with Native instructors committed to educating children in orphanages, and have trained teachers in both New York City and Washington, D.C. on several technological simulations that supported technology-based learning. She served on several district-level committees to improve school climate and served as an active participant in Seton Hall's Transformational Leadership Certificate Program. Marquetta earned her bachelor's degree in sociology and anthropology at William Patterson University, master's of science degree in educational technology at Ramapo College of New Jersey, and her last but not least, doctorate in organizational leadership at Stockton University, where she completed extensive research on school climate and leadership capacity. Actually, not last. But then she went on to complete her certification in diversity and inclusion at Cornell University, where she deepened her understanding for confronting bias in the workplace. Very impressive. Her work in the Patterson Public Schools included technology instructor, technology coordinator, teacher coordinator, and supervisor. In 2020, she launched Advanced Educational Consulting, LLC, where she offers diversity and inclusion training to learning institutions and corporations. As the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at RWJ Health, she now provides culturally competent training to medical staff to ensure equitable and culturally sensitive healthcare services. while advancing intergroup relations. Her role allows her to be passionate contributor to the Ending Racism Together initiative, which aims to improve health equity in all areas of the RWJ Barnabas Network. All right, as you can hear, we have an outstanding speaker with us this evening. So without further ado, I will pass it over and let her share her experience and expertise with all of you. It's all yours, Dr. Alexander.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, Jovan and Dr. Gray, for the lovely introduction. I didn't realize how much of a mouthful reading that bio is. So I thank you for that, but it just made me think that I probably need to provide a condensed version of it. But thank you so much. So good evening again, everyone. It is such a privilege to be here. I am a proud alumni of Stockton University's Organizational Leadership Program. And I have to say that it has significantly contributed to the success that I'm having now in the DEI space. And of course, so as she mentioned, I did go a little further to gain certification from Cornell in this area as well. But I have to say all the leadership training in the Stockton doctoral program was really, really, really helpful in just deepening my understanding of what it means to be an effective leader today. So Jovans, I did give you the PowerPoint. We can go ahead if you want to pull it up, or do you want me to pull it up? We can go ahead and get started. I have just a mini presentation for you. I just want to share some background information regarding DEI and how I actually work in this space at RWJ Barnabas Health. And then I will mention some key takeaways and leave it open for you to ask whatever questions you like. I really like to engage and interact with the audience, so I don't want to talk at you the whole time. So please write down your questions so that at the end, we can go ahead and have some talk about it. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, looks like your home screen. There we go.
Okay. Okay. So I want to start off with this quote. When we listen and celebrate what is both common and different, we become wiser, more inclusive, and better as an organization. I love this quote because it says it all. There are a ton of business cases and research that can provide great evidence as to why creating a DEI, a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment is crucial to the success of organizations. So in saying that, I just want to mention two articles I just read this morning that were really great, and they speak to this really well. Two quick reads by the Harvard Business Review. One article is Getting Serious About Diversity, Enough Already with the Business Case. Great article. If you have a chance, please jot that down. It's Getting Serious About Diversity, Enough Already with the Business Case. And then the second one is Diversity and Inclusion Efforts That Really Work. I wanted to share that with you this evening because it is such a great way to gain a pretty quick understanding as to why this work is so crucial. And as I mentioned, there's so much evidence to show how it really impacts the service line, the bottom line financially, and so many other avenues and aspects of an organization. So let's talk about diversity. Most of you know what this is. It's just a matter of embracing bringing together different people and embracing our unique talents. And this intersectionality just basically shows the many ways we exist and how we are different. And sometimes we have one or several of these attributes that make us who we are. Inclusion. It is hard to talk about diversity alone. It means nothing without the inclusivity of it all. So inclusion enables us to harness the power of diversity to achieve its goals by intentionally embracing an expansive set of attitudes, attributes, cultures, and skills throughout the system. We can have the biggest, best looking, diverse team we can imagine, but if we're not implementing solid practices that include these individuals where they have a space to really express who they are, to bring them their whole selves to work, and to be able to share their ideas and have it taken serious, diversity alone means nothing, okay? So I just want to point that out. And so here is just for those of you who like visuals like me, this is kind of what it looks like. So silos here. And sometimes when I look at this, I think of our BRGs. There are business resource groups, and I'll get into a little bit of that later. But you want to, it is okay. And at RWJ Barnabas, we support, and when I say support BRGs, we have a pretty nice budget to support these committees where employees can come together who share common interests and just strategize and talk about anything from their concerns to their goals or whatever it is. Just having that space to feel supported in the workplace means a lot. And then we also make sure that we have programming that provides for inclusive and collaborative opportunities for all staff. So although we support the groups over here, we want to make sure that they all can come together and still appreciate one another and find ways to work together on various efforts. Equity, the extent to which an organization provides fair and equitable treatment to all employees and groups. So we have equality, equity, and justice. I love this visual. Not only is it cool to look at, but it really, really drives the understanding, because all of these terms are used so interchangeably, and yet they're very, very different. So as you can see here, each individual was given, they were treated equally. They were given the same resource to see this soccer game, but it didn't work for it didn't work for this person. She's barely making it, she or he, right? And then when we look at the equity photo, we see that some adjustments were made to really provide an equitable opportunity. And then the justice piece, which is the most rewarding, is where we see these barriers totally removed so that they all truly have equality access. So here at RWJ Barnabas, we are an anti-racist organization. It is taken very seriously, and it's taken very serious. And we have a team of experts who prioritize this throughout our organization, to the point where every one of our 12 facilities has a D&I director. And we all focus on these 6 pillars. Employee optimization. We want to make sure that we are creating spaces for our employees to feel appreciated, to feel welcome, engaged, and as though they belong, because we need them. And we want them to know that we do, and that we appreciate them and we respect them, and that we mean it so much, to the point where we've created programming around their happiness, or to try and make them happy and keep them here, so that we can retain those employees here in our organization. Patient experience. When we have happy employees, we have happy patients. So, so that's our second pillar. And then operational alignment and excellence. We want to make sure that we're always using the best practices, and that we are always seeking out new ways to meet the needs of our employees and our patients. And health equity, we have an amazing initiative called Ending Racism Together, and I'll go a little further into that in a few. But with health equity, we're addressing health disparities among marginalized communities, and I'll speak more to that in a second as well. And community partnerships, we're always engaging with our external stakeholders to make sure that they know what we're doing and that we're inviting them into this space, and that we make ourselves available in the community as well by taking, we have a community outreach team that takes a mobile truck out to various locations and do free screenings of all types, mental health, for diabetes, high blood, and so many other things. And then our board and leadership engagement, we want to make sure that we have a diverse and leadership team among us to represent the demographics of our organization, and we're pretty diverse. So it's very intentional how we approach these initiatives. So let me just move on, because I don't want to speak too soon about the Ending Racism Together. That's coming up shortly, but you'll see the connection in a second. So psychological safety at work. When you are aiming to be effective in diversity, equity, and inclusion as a leader, you must be willing to allow everyone to take interpersonal risks. You must be able to build an effective team, to encourage teamwork, and encourage people to feel safe and free to speak up for safety, and be open and supportive of the BRGs that are available, and letting them have time to participate in them. Very important, because we can have all these resources, but if they're not supported by their direct reports, it's underused. We won't particularly get the best out of the purpose of this program. And then also it wastes a lot of money, because there's a lot of resources that are poured into this. So anyway, we found that when we are able to engage employees through our BRGs, the outcome is phenomenal. We find that most of our participants who do participate have a better attendance rate. A lot of times they go on to pursue other careers, and usually it's promotional. They become, a lot of them become leaders themselves, because they get comfortable speaking up and speaking out and sharing. So far this experience for them, and from what I've seen and being a part of it, has been phenomenal. And the BRGs are, in case you're not familiar with the term, they're business resource groups, but they are like committees, basically. So in order to improve psychological safety in healthcare teams, an in-depth understanding of the complex and nuanced nature of psychological safety is needed. Very important. So if they are not okay, we want to find out. We don't want to ignore them. And just to go back to the interpersonal skills, there was a time when leadership was about muscles, right? Flexing muscles and, letting everyone know who's the boss and who has the final say and things like that. We do not live, thankfully, in that age anymore. We have to be able to connect with people and really, really create an environment that's safe for them to truly be who they are. So Ending Racism Together, this is probably the initiative that I am most proud of with this organization. And they have really, I have to say they, because this was in place before I arrived. I was just happy to step in and be a part of this, because it is still rolling out. And in fact, last Thursday, we just celebrated 1 year of this initiative. And basically, RWJ Barnabas Health have put together policies and practices that are geared to end racism together. Phenomenal. Talking about practicing what you preach, this is it. So there are several policies that ensure equitable services to both our employees and our patients. But sometimes, because we often talk about what employees should be doing and how they should care for patients and things like that, it was discovered that we needed a policy to also protect our workers from patients who would come in and make racial comments and things like that. So that patients wouldn't come here to any of our hospitals feeling like they can insult a staff worker because of their race, this policy was developed. This came about in 2018, our refusal of care policy. And what this policy says is that if you are ill and you come to us for treatment, you cannot request a white doctor or a Black doctor or any kind of doctor based on race. We have the right to stabilize that patient and send them to another facility. So that's our policy. And I always, when I do the new hire, when I do the diversity and inclusion piece for our new hire orientation, they're always intrigued by this, right? Because it gives them a sense of safety, because we always talk about giving good service, and that is of the utmost importance, but we also want our employees to feel safe. And this policy really speaks to that. We are an LGBTQ plus friendly hospital, and we have received several accreditations for being LGBTQ friendly. And so we also have a policy that says, and it is exercised, and I train on this often, that when one of our LGBTQ members come to our facility, they must be treated without any sort of discrimination. They have a right to be seen by their same-sex partner. They have a right to every other healthcare resource that any other patient receives. And we have a team here that ensures that this happens. And in fact, one of the strongest BRGs that we have is our Proud BRG, and that is for this particular organization. This particular effort. And one of the things I'm working on a huge project right now, and I'll speak to that in a second. But one of the things I'm hoping we can do a little further along the way is open up a center of excellence just for this community, because we have so many resources now that many of our healthcare staff are just not aware of. So to have a team of specialists prepared to address this community would just be great, and it will break down a lot of barriers and a lot of embarrassment and things like that they tend to experience in the healthcare space. Unconscious bias training, I spend a lot of time doing this. We have over 2,000 employees at this particular facility. We have over 44,000 employees system-wide. We do have some required unconscious bias training that is in what's called a net learning platform. I'm sorry, I'm getting my words all twisted, it's getting late. But anyway, we have some training that they're required to take, and it's very basic, and sometimes people describe it as very boring. So they really look forward to the training that they get from the DEI directors, because we really go in, we get really deep, and we bring out the elephant in the room, and we're, for the most part, very comfortable having the uncomfortable conversations. And being the case, we get more honest feedback from people who have concerns around this. We also have monthly equitable encounters, where we usually have a featured speaker that talks about something having to do with bias or racism. And we then open it up to the whole audience to have like a Q&A. So that way, when people have questions, they have a space knowing that the talk and that particular meeting space is dedicated to addressing these concerns. They can speak up, they can ask questions. It's a very informal way to engage with everyone throughout the network, and it's been very successful. And then we have a focus on health equity. So at this particular facility, we have a Center of Excellence for Latino Health. And so we have a group of people who work with our Latino patients to help with translation, to help make sure they understand their at-home treatment and how to follow up with their appointments. We find out if whatever barriers they might have, if they need transportation, we may set them up give them bus passes or set them up with Uber and things like that. This has been very, very successful so far. There's still a lot of work being done around this, but for the most part, we're getting a really good response rate from our patients. I'm currently working on something similar, and that is creating a center of excellence for African American health. So I am currently working on a proposal for that. We have some grant funding that will be made available. So I'm also looking at different budgets and things like that. I mean, there are several components to it, but I'm glad that we have one center of excellence already that I can use as somewhat of a model. And then cultural competency trainings. I offer cultural competency trainings, enhancing workplace climate trainings, and then any other training that's necessary based on what's happening in a particular department or just throughout the organization. So this is all in support of our Ending Racism Together initiative. So the key takeaways from what I just shared with you is that I hope that you understood, is that leaders must build or have the capacity to effectively lead efforts that make staff feel engaged, supported, and safe. The more you embrace your own personal and leadership development, the more equipped you will become to deal with the complexities of current demands. And employee burnout and attrition rates are associated with physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion and have contributed greatly to negative organizational climate. So a lot of our employees have expressed that once we came out with the Ending Racism Together initiative, because of the amount of bias complaints that were made previously, they decided to stay. They were really impressed to see that it wasn't something just discussed, but there was an actual model in place where things started happening to show that we meant business. So that concludes this presentation. I am now ready to open up for Q&A. So feel free, just shoot and we can discuss, have an open dialogue about whatever you want pertaining to this topic.
Dr. Alexander, first and foremost, let me say thank you so much for such an interesting presentation. I was jotting down some notes and I do have some questions myself or some comments myself, especially about some of the progressive things that your works or your organization was doing in regard to D&I. So I definitely would like to have that conversation, but what I want to do at this time is I want to do it like a station break. We have a little station break because we have a giveaway.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Our keynote speaker from last night, Kimberly S. Reed, she is an author. She has a book entitled Optimist Always Wins, and Jobin is holding it up. Let me say something, Jobin, for the people so they can see you. Come on.
Hello. So this book is amazing. And while it's not DEI specific, it is one of those have to have on your bookshelf. Just Dr. Gray, this is like something you would write. It's very like cheerleader, booster spirits, and just it for my team when the keynote came to Rutgers and did a professional development training for us. She refreshed us and really helped us feel rejuvenated. And this book is just such a blessing. So you will absolutely get one, Dr. Alexander.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So we would like to give 2 away this evening. So that way you guys can be blessed with this as well.
Great, thank you.
And this is how you are quite welcome. And this is how we're going to do it. We are going to give a book away to the first person who asks a comment, ask a question in the comments. Okay. Secondly, we're going to give a book away to the person who guesses a number that I am thinking. You gotta get inside my head. I'm thinking of a number from 1 to 50, so start ruminating on it now. So get your question together. The first, after my question, because I'm going first. I'm first. I'm taking host privilege right now. The first person who asks a question in the comments, you get the book. And my question, Dr. Alexander, is this. When you were discussing a lot of progressive initiatives at your work setting, how much pushback, especially when you initiated you don't get the opportunity to ask for a specific ethnicity in terms of the doctor who sees you or provides you care. Mm-hmm. There have been several instances where that has been an issue, where people have come into a hospital facility and said, I don't want a Black doctor. I don't want an Asian doctor, or so forth, so forth. How was that received? Not just at the organizational setting level, but community-wide, like in terms of those who you care for. What did that look like when you rolled that out?
Right. So so I have to say, I'm really happy to say that since I've been here, we haven't had to deal with much of that because we're such a diverse hospital. So Clara, Mass, Jersey City, and Trinitas are probably the 3 most diverse facilities in this network. However, all D&I directors meet once a month to discuss some of these very issues you're mentioning. And usually the policy is revisited. There are some matters that needed to be escalated, meaning it had to go to the DEI space for mediation. If it was a patient, they may have to go to visit that patient and their family who's making such a request, just to explain to them that we have a zero tolerance policy pertaining to that. There are some cases when employees are just refusing to obey certain leaders because of their race. And that then becomes an HR matter. That's something that does fall under my great list of responsibilities. And a lot of times I haven't had many cases of that, but when they do occur, so far it's been pretty successful. It's just, having some well-planned talking points, just asking them to role play for a little bit, also revisiting the policies because we have quite a few that protect our staff from these biased comments and things like that. So I hope I answered your question. We do take it very serious on both ends, from a patient standpoint and the employee.
Okay. We have 2 questions, and it's so ironic. They came in almost close together.
Okay.
And one of them happens to be somebody who's very near and dear to me, and I'm gonna get her a book anyway because I don't want to feel like I'm stacking the deck. My wife Angie.
Oh, nice.
So sorry, Angie. I'm gonna buy you a book anyway, hon. But we have a question from Priscilla McCoy. She says the request for a doctor based on race is not permitted. Have you had to deal with request for a male versus female doctor or vice versa? Is that considered a bias or is it still permitted? Great question.
Absolutely. It is a bias, except you have to consider religious factors where this may be a concern. And so one of my baby projects here was that I worked with our PR department to develop a brochure on how to treat Muslim patients. We have one on how to treat the Orthodox Jewish community. And when I saw that from visiting another facility, I thought, oh my God, this would be great to have one made for Muslim patients and families, because we've seen such an influx of this population in both our workforce and in our service area, our patients. And so we developed this brochure, and it basically gives an overview of the religion and how they feel, how to treat them basically in the healthcare space. And so we do try to accommodate people when they ask for physicians of the same sex, but we also make it clear that if they're not available, it's our job to provide the best level of care. So if we can accommodate them in that way, we will. If we can't, then of course, we have to use the resources that we have. Great question. Thank you.
And we have another question for you in regard to rolling out the initiatives. Do you
Mhm.
find that the rolling out of the initiatives, were they, let me go back to the question because this is from our Facebook family here.
Okay.
All right, let me go back here. Do you find that most of the initiatives, are they proactive or reactive in terms of the
I think it's a little bit of both. So I think it started in a reactive space, and then it became very proactive as it began to progress because of the inclusivity of our advisory council that came together and said, okay, not only is this a problem, and not only do we need to tackle X, Y, and Z, but we also need to implement this policy and that policy to protect people going forward. So it was definitely a little bit of both.
I have another question, and for those who are our participants, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in, and we would love your questions and your comments. But I did, because this is, once I want to say, Dr. Alexander, I also received my certification in DEI from Cornell.
Nice, congratulations.
It was, when I tell you, it was eye-opening. It was an awesome experience, and it gave me so much to go on. I would like to ask this question of you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find that there, even in the most liberal organizations,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who think they're liberal in their thinking, but in practice, they're not very liberal when they're put in a position to act upon certain initiatives. Mm-hmm. Did you feel any? I know you said it's a diverse community, mm-hmm. but did you feel any pushback given some initiatives that you tried to roll out, especially coming in as a Black woman in this space?
Right. So most of the initiatives were already in place. I came in to help them roll it out. And in trying to do so, there was some pushback, and there still is. I mean, DEI is very uncomfortable work. We are disruptors. And I remember when I first started this program, I think it was George who said, oh, you're going to be disrupted. And we had t-shirts made, organizational leadership t-shirts that said, have you been disrupted today? And I remember hearing it, and I did understand it, especially as we covered so much of that, of how that happens in our classes. And even when Tracy and Dr. Snyder and Dr. Sweet joined us, and then yourself and the many other tremendous guest speakers that came into our space, you know, I understood what it meant to be disruptive, but when you think of it in a business sense, it is amazing. And so now that I'm working in this space, I really get to feel what that is. And so it is disruptive when you go to someone, your colleague especially, leadership, staff members who have a lot of power, who can certainly influence work environments, right, for our staff, and say, listen, we need to sit down and have a talk because there was something you mentioned in a conversation that needs to be addressed, or there was some overtime available that you didn't make accessible to everyone. You gave it to this particular person or that particular person. So yes, there is pushback, because if you're used to doing things a certain way, and it's not necessarily the equitable way to do it, right? And now you have someone here that's really focusing on that and making sure that everyone is treated with respect and with the opportunity to be successful. It's different, and it's uncomfortable for those particular people, you know? So I'm very comfortable having the uncomfortable conversation. And I have to say, if I wasn't, I probably wouldn't be successful in this role, because I have to talk about race a lot. I have to talk about microaggressions. I have to talk about unconscious biases. And sometimes we disagree. Sometimes there is conflict, but I think that as long as you can do it with respect, and when you have some evidence to back it up, that's always helpful. And especially when you work for an organization that have policies in place too, to support it, it makes it just a little easier to engage in these discussions. And most times they really end on a good note. My job is not to necessarily resolve these issues, but to be able to effectively manage it for the time being. It's ongoing work. It's a process. And it didn't, these thoughts that people have and these ways of thinking, it doesn't happen overnight. A lot of times it's embedded in our childhood. So we're talking about decades in many cases of being trained to think a certain way. And to undo that, it takes time. But I think that when you can get people to a space where they can at least be honest in their thinking without being judged, and they know you're not going to write them off just because they were candid in their thinking, that's when you really start to get somewhere. Because as leaders, we have to be emotionally mature too, to endure some of the conversation and some of the things that we may discover.
One of the comments on Facebook Live.
And may need to act upon.
Sometimes they may feel like their hands got caught in the cookie jar.
Mm-hmm.
And when children get their hand caught in the cookie jar, they get in the corner, they retreat and they feel ashamed, embarrassed. And that's that feeling. And that's especially, which is why there's so much backlash against this quote unquote thing called CRT that they don't want taught in schools, which isn't being taught in schools, which is another conversation in and of itself. Dr. Alexander, that we're going to have you back for. What I would like to do now is I would like to participants, I want you to think of that number from 1 to 50. I have thought of a number. I have come up with a number. The closest person between 1 and 50. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 50. And the closest person to 50, or closest to the number between 1 and 50, you will get the book, Optimist Always Wins. So please put your answer in the chat. We have 1. We have 2. We have 2 so far. I wish I had some Jeopardy music. Next time we do this, we gotta have some Jeopardy music. Hey, Joven, put down Jeopardy music for our to-do list. Okay, so we have 27. We have 44. We have someone on Facebook Live. Hey, Shamanique, how are you? 36. Do we have anybody else? And we have 7. The dean of our School of Education says 7.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Hey, Dr. Keenan, how are you?
Hi, Dr. Keenan.
So we have 26. Okay. And I guess I'm going to do how I do the going once, going twice. Dr. Keenan said, great talk, Marquetta. Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And Shamanique Montague, I was thinking of a number that said 34. And you said 36. Shamanique Montague, from our participant on Facebook Live, is the winner of our book. So Shamanique, I believe I have your address, but please DM me your address so that we can mail you out this book that from Kimberly Reed, Optimist Always Wins. Optimist Always Wins. Thank you so much. There's the book. There's the book. Yes. Optimist Always Wins. And she says, thank you. So what I would like to do at this time is, first of all, Dr. Alexander, thank you so much for, and I'm gonna turn it over to Joven because she's I'm gonna close up with a couple of remarks, and then I'm gonna have her close out. But
we have another question in the chat.
Oh, there's another question in the chat.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I feel like double dutch. I just want to jump in real quick.
Yeah,
go
bring
ahead,
it on.
please.
This is what I'm here for.
Bring it on.
We have 14 minutes left.
Oh yes, let's do it.
Let's use it.
Yes. So you had mentioned a few things. You mentioned Dr. Sweet, but you also mentioned a few things that made me think of Dr. Sweet. So for those of you who are joining us this evening and aren't familiar with Dr. Sweet, she is one of the amazing faculty that we have in the program. And her something that I want to say like her thing is unlearning. That is something that she spent a lot of time researching, and it's something that when we first get into the program in the first course or so, we learn a lot about unlearning. So Dr. Alexander, as you were talking about people being trained a certain way, having to reflect and be honest in their thinking, there's so much unlearning that has to happen. And often that is harder than actually learning something, but because it's so ingrained in us, it's such a hard thing. And even as we go through this program, and as I'm sure you can go down memory lane right now, think about your experience in the LEAD program, there's a few areas that we also had to unlearn, and it looks different for everyone. But it's something that when Dr. Sweet introduced that to us, I never forgot that. It always stayed with me. And it's just something that is just so instrumental as we move through the rest of this program. So speaking of the program, the question that Dr. Sweet has is, could you discuss one or two takeaways from the LEAD program to how you perform in your current job?
I want to say that the competencies are amazing. I oftentimes refer to them just as a framework to look at ways to constantly develop myself and improve. I've used some of those competencies when having to complete my evaluation. So it's called performance evaluation. I won't be up for review until I think like March of next year. But anyway, it asks me about ways I hope to improve. And because I work with people so much, I think it's always beneficial to improve how you communicate with people, right? Because the more you can connect with people, the more likely you are to be successful in winning trust and getting them to buy in. So and then also engaging stakeholders, because that is also a big part of my responsibility, is to be able to go out to different events. Sometimes we sponsor a lot of community events, and just being able to build new relationships and partnerships, and sometimes, share with people what I'm trying to do with opening the Center of Excellence for African American Health, and talking to them about possibly joining the advisory council, right? And so much of the competencies, I mean, we have many, I think it was like 20, so I can't remember them all by heart, but I can tell you that every single one of them were significant, and there were probably a top 5 maybe I had that really gave me a focal point for how I wanted to develop in my own leadership role. So that, and I think dealing with some of the obstacles that occurred during our cohort, it was insightful. And I remember one time, Dr. Keenan, I'm sure you remember well, we brought in Dr. Ken Hardy to address some issues with some bias undertones and things like that. And just, I remember kind of studying how he facilitated the whole conversation. It was interesting and it was intriguing. And I took away some things that I liked about how he facilitated those discussions, and then some things I would want to implement on my own. So that was an experience, that was a teaching experience for me. And I think just it being a cross-organizational program still is just amazing. It was the #1 reason for me even choosing the program. I have been around educators for so many years. I knew the jargon, I know pedagogy, I know curriculum, I know how to design it, write it, teach it, you name it. And so I was really hungry for something different. So to be able to have a space where I can meet for 2 weekends out of the month with professionals from all different industries, and to hear their experiences and learn from their perspectives, it was amazing. So I give a lot of credit to the program, and I think everyone that was involved in it for making it what it was for me. Overall, it was a really great experience.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And as someone who is writing their competencies right now.
Yes, get them done and make them meaningful.
You're the third person to say, get them done. That must be the inner slogan we have going on. But what I will say is, for those of us who are joining us right now, or who will watch this later on, if you're wondering, what are these competencies? What is unique to our program is we do not have a comprehensive exam. Instead, we have 20 mini little papers we have to write, many, really emphasis on many, unless you like to write a lot like I do, but that's just how I am. But what I would say is, what I've come to appreciate about the competencies is, because there's 20 of them, it really allows you to have the time that you need to really reflect on these areas and see, hey, I am actually doing these things. And it's bridging, this is what I'm doing in practice, but let me look at theory, right? What did I learn in the classroom, and how can I merge those together to really now feel more comfortable and confident in my ability and the things that I am already doing, the things that I can do better. So it just allows for that deep reflection, which we also get through the courses and the coursework that we do. So the program is very intentional by design, but it just allows you to make sense of everything that you're doing, so it can come back full circle. So I appreciate not having a comprehensive exam and being under that pressure and that time clock, and instead being able to write them if I want to write 5 in one night, or if I want to write, 1 a month, which don't do that. But you can kind of move at your own pace, which is really helpful as long as you're meeting that deadline. So for anyone wondering, that's just a little dive about more of our program and how it's really unique compared to some of the other programs out there. So we do have some more questions in the chat. Another question that we have is, what has been your experience with the gender neutral restrooms? Do you have anything in place to help people who might be uncomfortable?
There's a great speaking engagement coming up on that. We are a big sponsor of, as I mentioned, the LGBTQ community, and Pride Month is approaching us, right? And so in Montclair, we're dealing with that in a lot of the public spaces. I haven't had to interact with that particular issue in this setting yet. But I would look at where it's been done successfully for that person who's wondering how to address that. I would definitely look at where it's happening successfully and see if you can reach out to the person who was able to get it done, and find out what the process was like for them in trying to address that concern. Next question. You're welcome, Priscilla, anytime.
I don't have any questions on my end on Facebook Live, and I don't see any other questions in the chat as well.
Oh, great. Someone said I have one. It's 6:55, so we do have time for one more.
Yes, we do. Yes, who has one? Yes.
That is Dr. Sweet.
Hey, Dr. Sweet.
Hi, Dr. Sweet.
I knew Dr. Sweet was going to have a question. Come on now.
Question number 2 from Dr.
Yes,
Sweet.
she leads us with the questions whenever we're doing something. She goes first, especially when we're doing the dissertation. We're doing the dissertations. Oh my goodness, I'm having a moment right now. When they're defending.
Okay.
She always goes first. So I know she has a question. Dr. Sweet, please, by all means, put it in the chat. Let's go for it. Dr. Keaton said defense. Dr. Keaton, it is the evening time. I was up at 6, and it was a long day. Yep, it just have those moments where you just kind of like trying to find the word, like, I know what I'm trying to say here.
So how do I deal with privilege? So I feel like, so what I do is I call on an ally, whether it's a colleague or someone who's really comfortable talking about privilege, right? And if the audience is predominantly white, I like to have a white speaker discuss privilege, because I feel like that topic is better received from that audience, from someone who can speak to it, and really break down what it means, as opposed to me, who they might feel like, oh, well, how do you really know, or I find, so in the past, when I've had discussions about privilege, people got really defensive, right? Because it's very, it's uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people received it as if you were blaming them for something. And so although I was able to kind of level out the discussion to a comfortable level by saying, no, it does exist and here's how, right? And then it goes back to backing it up with evidence and data, videos and different things like that to show how. But I find that when you have a presenter that looks like the bulk of the audience speak to something that they may be affected by, there's less of a barrier there. And so you can spend more time having dialogue and sharing that information. And I think they receive it a lot faster than they do by someone who they think might be pointing the finger, so to speak. So, so yeah, that's how I would address that. And that's how I do address it. And I have colleagues that I'll say, listen, I think that, and I'm just going to use a fictitious name. I think that Kim is really struggling with this whole concept of privilege. Can you help her understand it? I think she can understand it coming from your perspective than my own, because you look like her. And I want her to know that it's not something she needs to feel defensive about, but it's just something we're trying to open her up to understanding.
Wonderful, thank you. Selfishly, I have one question that
No
we
problem.
can get through in 1 minute. So
Okay.
as a programmer at heart, I just absolutely love programming because it allows us to just spread really important education, awareness, and just it is a fantastic platform. So what we're doing this evening, all of you can expect more of this to come. We are really working hard, Dr. Gray, myself, the faculty, the OLA, Organizational Leaders in Action, which Dr. Alexander knows about as well, because you were on the board before, correct?
Yes, I was. Yep.
So that's something that, again, thinking about this program and the ways that it really helps prepare students. Serving as president this past year, I was able, along with the rest of the board, to really utilize programming as the platform to continue the conversation. And, what didn't we get to dive deep enough into in class because time ran out and we just wanted to keep the conversation going? Or, what can we bring in an alum? Can we bring in someone else to approach this from a different angle? Programming is our thing, and we want to continue to just add more to the program through out of the classroom programming. So you mentioned programming within your organization. If you don't mind sharing, what are some examples of the types of programming that you guys have been facilitating? And would you say that the employees are really taking advantage of this resource? Because as we've learned this past year through OLA, even through some of the sessions that Dr. Gray was hosting, we can have programming in place, but if people aren't getting there, it defeats the purpose. But if 1 or 5 are there, that's still enough. And, we can at least reach those folks. But what kind of programming have you been doing, and how do you really get people to participate?
Okay, great question. Thank you. So we have a lot of programming that already was in existence, and then some that I brought on as a new member to this organization. So some of the things that was already available is our employee assistance program. We call it EAP, and there are all kind of resources that are available in this particular hub that offer mental health services, if they're dealing with like drug addiction and things like that, like all kind of health services. And then also just support services, how they provide a lot of references to other community resources that might be available. We have tuition reimbursement for those who really would like to grow within the organization. And as long as they go back for something that can be used, as long as they pursue a career major that can be used in the organization, it is paid 100%. I said, oh my God, I should have been here like 5 years ago. But anyway, that's like a great resource, and I'm always telling people about that. We have what's called it's called the Bridge, and it's a resource hub with hundreds of different things employees can scroll through. We have what's called net learning in there, where they can go back and look at some of our trainings as a refresher. They can manage their payroll deductions and things like that if they want to join the 401k. I mean, there's so many things that they can utilize the service for. I think because it's so much information, it's overwhelming to people. So sometimes I do share with our department leaders that, every now and then, take a minute and just ask them, hey, have you checked into the portal lately, the Bridge? Have you seen, I'm sorry, it's getting a little spooky here. I'm in in the building alone, so I'm hearing these little sounds. I'm checking to make sure it's just me. But anyway, I asked them to just kind of reiterate that these services are available because we do find that they're underused. And a lot of our frontline workers, like our kitchen staff, the members, our staff workers in transportation and things like that, they're so busy, and so many of them work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. They don't feel like they have time to really stop. And I think some of them are still uncomfortable just embracing the technology around it all, because you have to get set up with the password and this and that. And so some of them are still intimidated. So I have been working with different departments and just kind of reiterating the importance of offering support at that end as well, so that they know how to access the services, because a lot of them just don't know. And I've actually included that in the new hire orientation. When I go up and present the DEI information, I also talk about the BRGs, and that's something that I've really expanded upon once I arrived here. So we only had one BRG, that was our proud BRG, but since then we've launched BPN, which is a Black Professional Network. We've launched Asian, which is our Asian network, where staff workers get involved and come together to share different interests and talk about, goals and concerns and things of that nature. And next month we're rolling out Salud, which is for our Hispanic population, and so forth. So right now we have 4 BRGs, and we have a diversity and inclusion committee. So I don't just make the decisions alone. I make sure that I include colleagues at all different levels, from our C-suite to kitchen staff, frontline workers, you name it. And so we meet once a month to discuss any D&I concerns. We also discuss opportunities, and a lot of the programming is distributed through these groups, because I cannot do this alone. So I have a budget, and what I do is, once they, come up with whatever programming they want to do, or anything that they're interested in that is supportive of the work environment, I make sure we have the money for it, and I get them what they need to make it happen. And sometimes it includes just going out a night of bowling. Maybe they just need to get together. We just came off of COVID, right? And now it's ticking back up a little bit, but so many people were stressed out, and they were just like, is this our new life? Like, we're just working. They were constantly called back for overtime because we had shortages. We face shortages just like anywhere else. And so we needed some things infused into our workspace to make it engaging and fun. And a lot of that is done with programming.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And sorry for going over time, everyone. Thank you for sticking around. So if we can just give another thank you, since I'm unmuted, I will give a traditional round of applause.
Okay,
thank you. Being able to do that in person.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alexander.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And have a great evening, everyone. Thank you for all of the wonderful questions. It's been so intriguing to see so many familiar names. Thank you for showing up and allowing me to talk to you this long.
Yes.
So everyone have a great evening, and I hope to be back soon.
Yes, we will take you up on that offer.
Okay.
So for everyone else, we hope that you will consider joining us again tomorrow evening. Tomorrow we will have Stephanie Wright. She will be our speaker discussing equity. If you haven't noticed already, we are doing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We're kind of spelling it out each night so we can take a deeper dive. So we're excited to have another lead student. Tonight was the alum. Tomorrow is a current lead student who will talk to you about how she really focuses on equity. And what I'm most excited about is Stephanie's position is not, DEI is not in her title. However, she's really intentional with how she incorporates it in the work that she does in the space that she's in. So please join us tomorrow evening, same link, 6 p.m. We look forward to reconnecting with you and seeing you tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.